There comes a moment when you realize that no one is coming to save you. It usually does not arrive with a dramatic breakdown, a loud cry for help, or a sudden crisis that pulls everyone to your side. Instead, it arrives in a quiet, heavy pause during an ordinary day. You might be staring out a window while the rain hits the glass, sitting in your car after turning off the engine, or placing a coffee cup down on the table, only to be struck by the sudden clarity that the weight you have been carrying is entirely yours to bear. For a very long time, you may have held on to a silent, unspoken hope. It was a subtle feeling tucked deep within your chest, a quiet belief that eventually someone would step in. You thought maybe a partner, a close friend, a mentor, or even just the passive passing of time would finally arrive and fix what feels broken inside you. You waited for someone to look closely enough to see the exhaustion behind your smile, to understand the unspoken pain you carry, and to gently take the burden from your shoulders. It is a deeply human wish to want to be rescued, to hope that the love or understanding of another person will finally make us feel safe and whole. But relying on external salvation only keeps you waiting, suspended in a state of helplessness. Every day spent waiting for someone else to fix your life is a day spent handing over your power. It leaves you sitting on the sidelines of your own existence, holding your breath for a rescue that was never meant to come from the outside world. The truth, as uncomfortable as it might feel at first, is that no one else possesses the key to your peace. Other people can offer comfort, companionship, and support, but they cannot walk inside your heart and heal the wounds that live there. They cannot process your emotions for you, and they cannot rebuild your inner strength. When this realization first hits, it can feel cold and terrifying. It can feel like standing alone in a vast, empty space with nowhere to hide from your own thoughts. You realize that the tears you shed in the dark are yours to wipe away, and the heavy heart you carry into every room is yours to soothe. But if you allow yourself to stay present in that discomfort, something remarkable begins to happen. The terror slowly gives way to a profound sense of relief. Because if no one else is coming to save you, it also means no one else has the power to hold you back. If your healing does not depend on someone else changing, apologizing, or suddenly understanding you, then your future is entirely in your own hands. You no longer have to wait for conditions to be perfect, or for the right person to validate your feelings. You can begin right now exactly as you are, in the quiet truth of this moment. Today, we are choosing to end that long, exhausting wait. We are deciding to stop looking at the horizon for a savior and instead look within. Taking responsibility for your own emotional life is not a burden. It is the ultimate form of freedom. It is the moment you step out of the waiting room of your own life and decide to become your own sanctuary, your own guide, and your own comfort. Before we move forward into this process of returning to yourself, take a quiet moment to anchor your mind. Leave a comment below with this affirmation: I hold the power to heal myself. Let those words serve as your quiet promise, a gentle commitment to step into your own strength and walk this journey with patience, honesty, and care. We are conditioned from an early age to look outward whenever we experience pain. Think back to when you were small, whenever you fell, scraped a knee, or felt afraid in the dark. A parent or caregiver was usually there to comfort you. They picked you up, wiped away your tears, and told you that everything was going to be all right. In those formative years, comfort and resolution almost always came from the outside world. It was a natural, beautiful part of growing up. But without realizing it, many of us carried that exact same expectation directly into our adult lives. We grew up physically, but emotionally. We remained waiting for an authority figure, a savior, or a protector to walk into the room whenever life became overwhelming. When emotional wounds occur in adulthood, that deeply ingrained childhood instinct kicks in. We naturally look for someone else to fix the broken pieces. You might find yourself trapped in a quiet, agonizing cycle of waiting for a specific person to apologize for how they treated you. You replay past conversations in your head, convincing yourself that if they would just acknowledge the damage they caused, say they are sorry, or finally understand how deeply they hurt you, the heavy knot in your chest would instantly dissolve. You make your emotional peace entirely conditional on their willingness to give you closure. Or perhaps you look toward the future, searching for a new relationship or friendship to fill the hollow spaces inside you. You hold on to the belief that if you can just find the right person, someone who truly sees you, loves you unconditionally, and holds you close, all your internal anxiety, loneliness, and self-doubt will magically disappear. You imagine that being loved by someone else will automatically teach you how to love yourself, or that their presence will act as a permanent shield against the discomfort of your own thoughts. This is the subtle, dangerous trap of the rescuer. It tricks you into believing that your healing belongs to someone else, effectively placing your emotional well-being into hands that do not belong to you. When you wait for the person who hurt you to fix what they broke, you remain chained to the very source of your pain. You give them complete control over your emotional climate. If they choose never to apologize, never to change, or never to understand, you remain stuck in place, forever waiting for a permission slip to heal that will never arrive. And when you look to a new person to save you, you place an unfair and impossible burden on their shoulders. No human being, no matter how kind, loving, or devoted they are, can carry the weight of your unhealed past. They cannot resolve your internal conflicts or fill a void that exists within your own self-worth. Relying on someone else to complete you or fix your life creates a fragile foundation built on fear and dependence, where any distance or conflict feels like an existential threat to your peace. The truth is, no one can offer you lasting comfort if you are unwilling to offer it to yourself. No apology from the past can restore your self-esteem if you continue to view yourself as broken. No partner in the present can make you feel secure if you constantly abandon your own needs to keep them around. The moment you expect someone else to step into the role of your rescuer, you surrender your own agency. You become a passive spectator in your own life, sitting by the window and watching for someone who was never meant to show up. Breaking free from this trap requires a gentle but firm shift in perspective. It means coming to terms with the reality that closure is not something someone else gives to you. It is something you create for yourself. It means realizing that you do not need the person who hurt you to acknowledge your pain in order for that pain to be valid. And you do not need their permission to move forward. You can decide today that your story will no longer be on hold while you wait for someone else to change. Healing begins the exact moment you reclaim your power from the outside world and bring it back home to yourself. It is the realization that your peace is far too precious, far too important to be left in someone else's hands. You are allowed to stop waiting for an apology that will never come. You are allowed to stop searching for someone else to hold your broken pieces together. When you decide to step into your own strength, you realize that the person you have been waiting for to save you, to protect you, and to build a peaceful life for you has been looking back at you in the mirror all along. To heal yourself, you must first be willing to sit with who you are right now, without judgment, defense, or the need to look away. Many of us spend years running from our own internal discomfort. We live in a world that offers endless escapes, making it remarkably easy to ignore the quiet ache inside our own chest. We fill our calendars until there is no breathing room left, jumping from one task to the next, or we keep background noise playing constantly just to avoid the heavy silence of an empty room. We keep our minds occupied because the moment everything goes still, the feelings we have spent so long pushing down begin to rise to the surface. We run because we are afraid of what we might find if we actually slow down and look inward. We fear that if we open the door to our hidden pain, we will be completely overwhelmed by it. We worry that facing our grief, our regrets, or our deepest insecurities will prove that we are somehow fundamentally broken or beyond repair. So we put on a strong face for the world, pretending that everything is fine, while quietly carrying an unbearable weight beneath the surface. But running away from yourself is an exhausting game, and the energy it takes to constantly hide from your own emotions leaves you drained, disconnected, and hollow. The reality is that the parts of you that hurt will keep knocking on the door of your awareness until you turn around and pay attention to them. Pain does not simply vanish because you choose to ignore it. It merely buries itself deeper into your subconscious, quietly shaping your life from the shadows. Carl Jung once observed that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. When you constantly avoid looking inward, your buried wounds continue to drive your reactions, your choices, and your relationships without your permission. You might find yourself lashing out at people you love over minor issues, retreating into isolation whenever things get difficult, or repeatedly choosing paths that leave you feeling unfulfilled, all while wondering why the same painful patterns keep repeating in your life. Facing the inner reflection means finally choosing to stop running. It means having the courage to sit down quietly with yourself, drop the protective armor, and look at your truth with gentle, compassionate eyes. It is about acknowledging the hurts you have tried to forget, the mistakes you carry guilt over, and the unmet needs you have tried to pretend do not matter. When you sit in stillness and allow your emotions to just exist without trying to fix them, judge them, or push them away, you begin to demystify your pain. You start to see that an emotion is not a permanent sentence. It is simply a temporary wave passing through you, asking to be felt and understood. This process requires a profound shift in how you treat yourself. For a long time, you may have been your own harshest critic, constantly pointing out your flaws, berating yourself for past failures, or demanding that you be stronger than you currently are. But you cannot heal in an environment of self-criticism and harsh judgment. Healing requires self-compassion. It means speaking to yourself with the same warmth, patience, and tenderness that you would offer to a dear friend who is going through a difficult time. When an uncomfortable thought or a surge of anxiety arises, instead of pushing it away, you learn to place a hand on your heart and say, "I see you. I hear you. And it is okay to feel this way." Turning toward yourself in this way takes immense bravery, but it is the initial, indispensable step toward genuine freedom. You cannot heal what you refuse to acknowledge, and you cannot transform a life you are unwilling to look at honestly. The moment you decide to sit with your inner reflection, to hold space for your own light and your own shadow, the internal battle finally begins to end. You stop treating yourself like a problem that needs to be solved, and you start treating yourself like a human being who deserves care, presence, and love. That quiet turning inward, where you look into the mirror of your own soul without fear, is where true, lasting transformation truly begins. When you rely on others to validate your progress, your self-worth becomes a turbulent, unpredictable roller coaster tied entirely to their opinions. From a very young age, so many of us were subtly taught that our value was measured by how happy we made the people around us. We learned to shapeshift, to alter our voices, soften our boundaries, and suppress our own genuine feelings just to keep the peace and ensure we remained liked, accepted, and approved of. Over time, this desire to please transforms from a harmless habit into an exhausting survival mechanism. You begin to measure your goodness by the smile on someone else's face, and you evaluate your worth based on whether or not others agree with the life you are choosing to live. Living this way creates a quiet, constant state of internal anxiety. You find yourself second-guessing every single decision you make, no matter how small, simply because someone close to you did not react with immediate enthusiasm. You might hold back from pursuing a new interest, changing a career path, or walking away from an unhealthy situation because you are terrified of the disappointed look on someone else's face. Or perhaps you withhold your true thoughts in everyday conversations, constantly swallowing your honest words and nodding along just to avoid conflict, trading your authenticity for temporary acceptance. You become so accustomed to tuning into everyone else's frequency that you completely lose track of your own inner voice. The subtle danger of seeking external approval is that it requires you to repeatedly abandon yourself. Every time you say yes to someone else, when your heart is screaming no, you send a quiet message to your own soul that their comfort matters more than your truth. Every time you wait for someone else to validate your pain before you allow yourself to grieve, or wait for permission before you honor your own boundaries, you surrender your authority over your own life. You end up living a life designed by the expectations, fears, and opinions of other people, while your true self remains locked away in the shadows, waiting for a freedom that only you can grant. Breaking the cycle of seeking approval requires shifting your center of gravity completely back inward. It means learning to trust your own instincts, even when those around you do not fully understand or support your path. You have to come to terms with the liberating truth that you are not here to fulfill anyone else's expectations, nor are you required to live a life that makes sense to everyone around you. People will view your choices through the lens of their own experiences, their own unhealed wounds, and their own limited perspectives. Their inability to see your worth or understand your growth is a reflection of where they are on their journey, not a measure of your value. True self-healing means stepping into the quiet confidence of knowing that you do not need a permission slip from anyone else to change, to set a firm boundary, or to start over completely. You do not need to explain yourself until you are blue in the face just to prove that your feelings are valid. You do not need to convince the people from your past that you have grown into someone new. Your growth is real simply because you are living it. And your peace is sacred simply because it is yours. When you make a decision that aligns with your highest good, that choice carries weight and dignity on its own. It does not require a round of applause to make it correct. Reclaiming your autonomy feels scary at first because it often means risking the disappointment of those who benefited from your lack of boundaries. But the discomfort of disappointing someone else pales in comparison to the agonizing pain of continuously disappointing yourself. As you practice honoring your own internal voice, you build a steady, unshakable foundation within. You learn to listen to your needs first, to validate your own emotions, and to stand proudly behind your choices. Your growth no longer depends on the gentle nods or praising words of the crowd. You realize that the only approval you truly need to live a peaceful, meaningful, and authentic life is the approval you offer to yourself every time you choose your own truth. The stories we tell ourselves about our past can either lock us in place forever or slowly set us free. It is remarkably easy to fall into the habit of replaying old conversations and painful memories in your head, like a film you cannot turn off. You find yourself constantly returning to the moment you were let down, abandoned, or misunderstood, examining every detail to make sense of the hurt. Without even realizing it, your mind begins to build a story around those experiences. You start internalizing the pain, turning temporary events into permanent truths about who you are. You might catch yourself quietly thinking, "I was not enough for them," or "I am just destined to be let down," or "good things never last for me." These internal narratives feel so vivid and real because they were forged in moments of deep vulnerability and heartbreak. But those sentences are not unchangeable facts. They are interpretations born out of hurt. When you are wounded, your mind tries to protect you by creating a story that explains why the pain happened, hoping that if it can assign blame or predict future failure, it can keep you safe from being hurt again. But when you hold on to those old scripts year after year, they stop protecting you and start imprisoning you. They convince you that your past defines your capacity for future joy, keeping you tied to the very moments that caused you the most sorrow. Becoming your own healer means stepping into the role of the storyteller in your own life and bravely examining those deeply held beliefs. It requires you to look at the stories you have carried for so long and ask yourself whether they are serving your growth or keeping you small. You have to recognize that the way someone else treated you was a reflection of their own internal limits, their own capacity to love, and their own unhealed struggles. It was never a definitive statement on your worth. When someone failed to show up for you, it did not mean you were unlovable. It simply meant they did not have the tools or the emotional depth to meet you where you were. Rewriting your narrative does not mean erasing your past, pretending that painful things never happened, or forcing yourself to look at trauma with toxic positivity. Your pain was real, your tears were valid, and the difficulty of what you survived deserves to be acknowledged with gentle reverence. Rewriting the story simply means choosing to change the conclusion. It means taking the pen back into your own hands and deciding that a painful chapter was merely a part of your journey, not the final destination. You get to decide whether an experience remains a permanent defining flaw that dictates your future, or becomes the precise moment you discovered your own strength and emotional depth. When you shift your perspective, the narrative transforms from one of helplessness to one of profound self-reliance. Instead of repeating, "I was abandoned," you begin to say, "I survived being left alone, and I learned how to stand on my own 2 feet." Instead of believing, "I am fundamentally broken," you begin to recognize, "I was deeply hurt, but I am actively rebuilding myself every single day." This simple shift in language removes the power from the circumstances that hurt you and places it firmly back into your hands. You stop viewing yourself as a victim of your past and start recognizing yourself as the resilient author of your present. Taking ownership of your story allows you to honor the version of you that went through the fire without forcing your current self to stay burned. You can look back at your younger self with deep empathy, acknowledging how hard things were, while reassuring them that the story does not end in that dark place. You are no longer bound by the old scripts written in moments of defeat. Every morning you wake up, you are handed a blank page. You have the power, the right, and the capacity to write a new narrative, one defined by peace, self-respect, and the quiet understanding that your past was just the soil in which your strength took root. Part of taking full responsibility for your own journey is recognizing that the source of your pain is not always external. It is comfortable and easy to look outward and point at the world, blaming difficult people, painful circumstances, or unfair situations for the heavy feelings you carry. But if you are truly honest with yourself, there are moments when the turbulence you experience is being generated from within. Within each of us lies a hidden space, a dark, quiet corner of the human psyche that holds all the parts of ourselves we have tried to deny, reject, or pretend do not exist. We push down our jealousy, our anger, our deep insecurity, and our hidden fears because we worry that facing them would make us unlovable or flawed. Yet, those buried parts of yourself do not simply disappear because you refuse to look at them. Instead, they remain hidden just beneath the surface, waiting for a trigger to pull them into the light. Often, the traits and behaviors that irritate or hurt us most in other people are direct reflections of the very things we have denied within ourselves. Carl Jung captured this dynamic with profound clarity when he wrote that everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. When you find yourself reacting with sudden, intense frustration toward someone else, perhaps toward their need for control, their emotional distance, or their desire for attention, it is often an invitation to stop looking at them and start looking at what that reaction is stirring up inside your own heart. If you find yourself deeply triggered by someone else's emotional detachment, it might be a gentle, uncomfortable call to look at how you pull away from yourself when things get difficult. If someone's constant need for approval bothers you deeply, it may be because you are quietly wrestling with your own unspoken desire to be validated and seen. The things that provoke us in the outside world are rarely just about the other person. They act as mirrors, reflecting back the precise places inside us that are still asking for attention, understanding, and healing. Ignoring these hidden aspects of yourself creates a constant, subtle war within your own chest. When you spend all your energy trying to maintain a perfect, acceptable image for the world, you end up splitting yourself in two. You accept only the pleasing, calm, and presentable parts of your identity, while banishing your raw, messy, and painful emotions to the shadows. But healing does not come from pretending to be perfect. True healing occurs when you gather the courage to embrace your whole self, including the defensive, hurt, jealous, and uncomfortable parts that you have spent a lifetime trying to hide. Embracing your shadow requires a deep shift from judgment to curiosity. When a sudden surge of anger, envy, or bitterness arises, instead of immediately feeling ashamed or trying to shove it back down, you learn to pause and ask yourself a gentle question. What is this feeling trying to show me about my unhealed wounds? Anger often points to a boundary that was crossed without your permission. Jealousy often reveals a hidden longing or a need you have been neglecting in your own life. Insecurity often highlights a place where you are still waiting for someone else to tell you that you are worthy. When you learn to look at your darkest emotions with kindness rather than shame, you stop projecting your pain onto the world around you. You stop blaming others for triggering wounds that were already present long before they arrived. Transforming your relationship with your shadow allows you to step into a state of profound internal wholeness. You no longer have to fear being exposed because you have already looked at your own darkness, held it gently, and brought it into the light of your own self-compassion. In doing so, you stop fighting against yourself and finally discover the peaceful harmony that comes from being entirely, authentically whole. Self-trust is not built through grand, dramatic gestures or sudden life overhauls. It is forged quietly in the small, everyday promises you keep to yourself when no one else is watching. Many of us spend our lives waiting for a sudden burst of courage or an overwhelming wave of confidence to finally make a change, thinking that self-trust is something you either have or do not have. But true self-trust is not a personality trait. It is a relationship, a deep, intimate friendship you cultivate with yourself over time through consistency, care, and reliability. When you think about how trust is built with another person, the formula is clear. You trust someone because they consistently show up when they say they will, because their actions align with their words, and because they treat your needs with respect. The exact same rule applies to the relationship you have with your own inner self. Every single day, you make quiet promises to yourself, promises about how you will rest, how you will care for your mind, or how you will protect your time. Every time you honor those commitments, you send a powerful signal inward that you are safe, reliable, and capable. Conversely, when you repeatedly break those small promises to yourself, a quiet breach of trust occurs within your own heart. It happens in subtle ways that seem harmless on the surface. It is choosing to stay up late, staring at a screen, when you know your mind and body are desperately crying out for rest. It is promising yourself that you will spend 30 quiet minutes on a personal project that brings you joy, only to set it aside the very second someone else reaches out with a minor request that could easily wait. When you consistently put your own needs at the bottom of the priority list, you teach yourself a painful lesson: that your word does not matter, and that your own needs are not worthy of respect. Over time, this continuous self-abandonment erodes your confidence from the inside out. You begin to feel hesitant, insecure, and deeply reliant on others because, deep down, you know you cannot count on yourself to follow through. You hesitate to make decisions, doubt your own judgment, and constantly look for external approval because you do not feel secure in your own hands. Rebuilding that broken internal bond requires you to treat your commitments to yourself with the exact same urgency, care, and respect that you so willingly offer to the rest of the world. Building everyday self-trust begins with small, doable steps. It means making micro-commitments that you can realistically keep, and then holding them sacred. It is deciding to turn off your phone 20 minutes earlier at night to give your mind space to unwind, and actually doing it. It is honoring your boundary when you tell yourself you will step away from work at a certain hour, rather than letting it bleed into your personal peace. When you keep these tiny agreements, you begin to rewrite your internal belief system. You start proving to yourself, moment by moment, that your needs are valid and that your word carries real authority in your own life. This process also requires tremendous patience when you inevitably slip up. Rebuilding self-trust does not mean you will execute every day perfectly, nor does it demand flawless discipline. When you fail to keep a promise to yourself, the goal is not to fall into harsh self-criticism or give up entirely. Instead, self-trust grows when you respond to your own missteps with gentle compassion. It is the ability to look at yourself without judgment, acknowledge where you stumbled, and gently say, "It is okay. We will try again right now." As you nurture this daily discipline, something profound shifts within your emotional core. You stop feeling like a feather blown around by every passing breeze or the changing opinions of others. You cultivate a steady, quiet, internal anchor. You learn that no matter how chaotic the world around you becomes, or how difficult a situation turns out to be, you can count on yourself to listen, to care, and to stand by your own side. That unshakable self-reliance is the true foundation of healing. The quiet, steady knowledge that you will never abandon yourself again. There is a profound, life-changing difference between fault and responsibility. For a long time, these two concepts can feel completely intertwined, leaving you trapped in a cycle of deep resentment and exhaustion. What happened to you in your past may not have been your fault at all. You did not ask to be let down, abandoned, mistreated, or placed in situations where your heart was broken. Acknowledging that truth is an essential, non-negotiable step toward healing. Your pain was real. The injustice was real. And you were not responsible for the choices, actions, or limitations of those who hurt you. However, staying trapped in the belief that your present emotional state is someone else's job to fix keeps you completely powerless. When you hold on to the expectation that the person who hurt you must be the one to repair you, you hand them the keys to your future. You place your healing, your peace, and your growth on an indefinite hold, waiting for a resolution that may never arrive. Looking backward at who broke your trust or who caused your tears might explain why you carry certain wounds today, but it will never heal those wounds. Blame explains the past, but only responsibility can build your future. Taking responsibility for your life today does not mean excusing the actions of those who let you down, nor does it mean minimizing the severity of what you went through. It does not require you to pretend that the pain did not happen, or to offer forgiveness before you are ready. Responsibility simply means refusing to allow past events to dictate the rest of your story. It is the brave decision to say, "What happened to me was unfair. But what I do with my life from this moment forward is entirely up to me." It is realizing that while you were not responsible for being wounded, you are entirely responsible for your own recovery. When you reclaim responsibility without blame, you stop viewing your life through the lens of helplessness. You stop waiting for conditions outside of yourself to change before you permit yourself to feel okay. You realize that holding on to resentment, constantly reliving the betrayal, the unfairness, or the coldness of another person, does not punish them at all. It only keeps you locked in the very memory that hurt you in the first place. Releasing blame is not a gift you give to the person who hurt you. It is an act of deep mercy you offer to yourself. This shift in perspective completely restores your emotional authority. Instead of asking, "Why did they do this to me?" you begin to ask, "What do I need to offer myself right now to move forward?" Instead of dwelling on what was taken away from you, you focus your energy on what you can build starting today. You take ownership of your boundaries, your choices, your environment, and the way you treat yourself in moments of weakness. You stop looking at your wounds as permanent evidence of your defeat and start viewing them as the very places where your independence and wisdom took root. Stepping into full responsibility feels heavy at first, but it quickly reveals itself to be the ultimate form of freedom. It means you no longer have to wait for an apology to feel worthy. You no longer have to wait for someone else to change in order for you to feel safe. You become the active, conscious architect of your own emotional world. When you take complete ownership of your life, you stop looking backward at who broke you and start looking steadily forward at who you are building. You realize that you have always held the power to reshape your reality, and that your future is a blank page waiting for your own hands to write it. In a world designed to keep your attention constantly fragmented, choosing to sit in stillness is a radical act of self-preservation. From the moment we wake up, we are bombarded with a continuous stream of input, notifications, news, conversations, demands, and endless distractions. We have become so conditioned to constant stimulation that silence can feel jarring, uncomfortable, and even deeply intimidating. Many people mistake quiet moments for empty moments, immediately reaching for a screen, a task, or background noise the instant a room goes quiet. We fill every brief pause in our day because we fear what might rise to the surface when the noise stops. We avoid silence because stillness acts as an undeniable mirror. In the busyness of daily routines, it is easy to ignore the quiet ache in your chest, the unresolved grief, or the persistent anxiety that you carry beneath the surface. Activity becomes a defense mechanism, a way to keep your mind occupied so you do not have to feel the weight of your own unaddressed emotions. But constantly running from silence does not make your internal discomfort vanish. It merely keeps you in a state of perpetual exhaustion, disconnected from your own inner life. The art of sitting in silence is about learning to reframe quietness, not as a void to be filled, but as a sacred space where healing begins. Real clarity cannot emerge when your mind is continuously crowded with external input. When you permit yourself to sit quietly, without a device in hand, without a task to complete, and without trying to analyze or solve everything at once, you give your inner voice room to finally speak. You allow the settled dust of your daily life to clear, revealing the thoughts, feelings, and truths that have been patiently waiting for your attention. When you first sit in stillness, your mind may race, and uncomfortable emotions may surface. You might feel a wave of restlessness, a sudden surge of sadness, or a deep fatigue that you did not realize you were carrying. The key to mastering silence is not to fight these feelings or force your mind to go completely blank. Instead, it is to adopt the role of a gentle, compassionate observer. You learn to sit with your discomfort without running away from it, recognizing that an emotion cannot harm you simply by being felt. You watch your thoughts pass by like clouds in the sky, offering yourself the patience and warmth you so generously extend to others. In those quiet, uninterrupted moments, something subtle and profound begins to shift inside your heart. You stop reacting out of habit and start listening out of care. You begin to notice what your body is trying to tell you, where you are holding tension, where you feel depleted, and what boundaries you need to set to protect your peace. Silence becomes the sanctuary where you process your grief, restore your mental energy, and reconnect with your true essence, separate from the roles, expectations, and demands of the world. Practicing stillness daily builds an unshakable internal grounding. When you become comfortable with silence, you no longer rely on external distractions to keep your anxiety at bay. You develop a deep, peaceful relationship with your own presence, learning that you are safe in your own company. The world outside may remain fast, loud, and unpredictable, but within the quiet space of your own heart, you possess an enduring shelter. Silence ceases to be a lonely emptiness. It becomes the very place where you gather your strength, listen to your inner truth, and gently guide yourself home. Ultimately, becoming your own sanctuary means creating an internal space where you feel completely safe, accepted, and supported, no matter what happens in the world around you. For a long time, you may have searched for that sense of security outside yourself. You looked for it in the approval of others, in the stability of relationships, or in external achievements, hoping that the right circumstances would finally make you feel safe in your own skin. But external things are inherently fragile and subject to change. When you rely on the outside world to be your shelter, every unexpected shift, disappointment, or loss threatens to tear down your peace. Building an internal sanctuary begins when you decide that you will no longer be a hostile place for your own soul to inhabit. So many of us live with a constant, critical voice in our heads that berates us for every mistake, judges us for our vulnerabilities, and demands that we be better, stronger, or different than we currently are. You cannot feel safe inside a mind that constantly attacks you. Becoming your own healer requires replacing that harsh inner critic with unconditional kindness. It means learning to speak to yourself with gentle warmth, offering yourself the exact same patience, forgiveness, and understanding that you so freely give to the people you love. When you become your own sanctuary, your relationship with uncomfortable emotions transforms entirely. Instead of running from your sadness, fear, or anxiety, you learn to turn inward and offer yourself comfort. When a storm of emotion hits, you do not abandon yourself or look for a distraction to numb the pain. Instead, you sit down with your feelings, place a hand on your heart, and reassure yourself that it is okay to be hurting. You become the steady, loving presence that stays by your side through every difficulty, reminding yourself that no feeling is permanent and that you have the strength to weather any storm. This internal safe haven also allows you to hold firm, loving boundaries with the outside world. When you know your worth and honor your peace, you stop allowing people or environments into your life that drain your spirit or cause you harm. You learn to say no without guilt. Walk away from situations that no longer serve your growth and protect your energy with quiet confidence. Your sanctuary is not a wall that shuts the world out. It is a sacred boundary that ensures only respect, honesty, and genuine care are allowed inside. Life will always bring unexpected shifts, moments of grief, and seasons of deep uncertainty. But those outer storms no longer have the power to destroy your foundation. When you build a sanctuary within, you realize that you carry your home wherever you go. You no longer wander through life searching for someone else to complete you, validate you, or keep you safe. You are fully grounded in your own presence, standing steadily on your own 2 feet, and guiding yourself with clarity, love, and courage.